what Trump has said publicly
Yes.
is that he has not ruled out the opportunity for a third term, and there are ways to do so.
And there are people pushing this narrative also.
So we have precedents, right? We have the Singaporean president, what's his name? Lee Kuan Yew. And then we have Joseph Tito, I think his name is, from Yugoslavia, who reigned for a long time. I think maybe he's still reigning. We have a couple of other precedents where this has been set. Now, we obviously have El Salvador with this new benevolent dictator. So apparently it's worked. Though, if you look at Yugoslavia, you look at Singapore, you look at El Salvador, those countries are the size of Georgia.
Correct.
So from a scale perspective, is it easier to maintain benevolent dictatorship over a landmass the size of Georgia? Probably easier than the United States. So there's a scale consideration there. But the precedent has still been set. And if we were to follow Singapore and Yugoslavia, and now El Salvador, there's a lot of tension around the means and ways in which they're doing things. Seems like it works. And so would American culture, Matt, do you think they would be prepared and they could take on a benevolent dictator like Singapore, Yugoslavia, or El Salvador?
I've been watching a lot of previous Lee Kuan Yew speeches. I've been doing some of his reading some of his writings, watching some of his speeches. Lee Kuan Yew is a phenomenally interesting person, right? He took this country, Singapore, which was poor, illiterate, spoke 4 different languages throughout the country. They had no economy. It was a mess. And he turned it around in a generation, and it is one of the highest GDP countries in the world. It is one of the most literate and educated countries in the world. And as a political system and as a country, they have gone 180 degrees from a shit country to actually a pretty amazing country.
They make all the silicon chips.
So, was it effective? Yes.
History says so.
In the process of him doing it, he has been unapologetic about removing dissenters, literally having them imprisoned. He was very involved in people's personal lives, changing the way people think, removing people's language, changing what people study and on what they're educated on, and even doing things like removing any sort of religion from anything related to government. I just watched a speech of him saying that the Muslims say that you have to do it this way, and the Christians, the evangelical Christians come and they say, well, you gotta be this way. And the reality is that if you let them do it the way they do it, it doesn't work. You have to get them out. So they are an extremely atheist type of country. Everyone speaks English. Everyone speaks Chinese. Could you make a country successful using that model? And proof says yes.
Yes. Now, have we done it at scale the size of America? No.
Correct.
But there's always compromises on either side, right? There's always going to be the naysayers and the people who are like, "Oh, you're trampling on my civil liberties. You're going into dictator mode. You're not allowed me to do that." It's like, but for the greater good is always the excuse on both sides, right? We're gonna shut you up for the greater good. We're gonna inject you with this poison for the greater good. You have to wear this mask 6 feet distance for your greater good. But then there's also on the other side of that, it's like, would you like mass murderers to go down to 0? Would you like robbing and killing to go down to basically 0? Would you like to feel safe in your own streets? Like every single report, and maybe there's bias there, because I've watched probably at least 4 or 5 hours of documentaries on El Salvador and the prisons. And for me, as an entrepreneur, it is a manufacturing and engineering marvel what they've done in those penitentiaries, what they've created, the systems that they've created. So for me, that's where my curiosity is. It's like, you ever watch like a Discovery show where it's like mega technology builds? It's like, holy crap, I didn't even know that humans were capable of building this type of machinery, like these huge dump trucks that are the size of this entire building. That was what intrigued me. But after going through all of that, when they do interviews, because they have to show both sides of the locals, all the locals there are saying, this was good. You have militarized police outside your door all the time, but I can walk safely. My daughter feels safe. We can go to school finally again. We can finally go out to the market. We can have a Saturday evening dinner with my family for the first time. These are all the reports that I saw from these videos. And so from that perspective, from the locals, it seems like the vast majority of people would prefer safety over crime.
And the few people that were arrested wrongfully, that are sitting in jail, sorry, that sucks.
But you're always going to have collateral damage in any decision you make.
It is just a handful of people. Just a quick break before this video continues. If you haven't signed up for Soju yet, go check it out, soj.oo. It's a social discussion platform that we've created. That's where the community is hanging out. Definitely worth checking out, soj.oo. Also, if you're not subscribed to the channel yet, do it now. You know, a handful of people are wrongfully arrested and put away forever.
Same thing
with
this,
no chance of ever getting out. Like that's
and no due process.
And no due process. You know, like it happens.
It's part of the collateral. Like here's the liberal vantage point is always what you say. We have to include the margins.
Correct.
Margins are part of this, are what we call in statistics statistical anomalies. You remove the statistical anomalies so you can have a baseline data set that works. If you include the statistical anomalies, then it's going to offset all of your average, your means, and all the data. And so in any type of major decision of policy, like ICE and getting rid of all of the illegal aliens who are in our country illegally because they are not documented and legal, that's what we're focusing on here for a second, is there going to be a couple that are going to be wrongfully imprisoned? Yes, it's part of the statistical database and data set. It's going to happen.
What is the acceptable margin of error then? I think that's a really interesting question.
If we focus on Lean Six Sigma principles, then it would be it'd be 6%.
6%. So if a million people were to be deported over time, then we accept the fact that 60,000 people will be done incorrectly. And if a million people get arrested, 60,000 people wrongfully arrested, it's okay.
But that's
a lot of people, by the way.
That is a lot of people, but
I'm not saying one's right or wrong.
I think I'm incorrect on Lean Six Sigma. I think it's lower than that. I think it's 0.06.
6,000 people.
6,000 people.
Yeah.
So 6,000 people out of a million is not bad.
Yeah, it's not bad.
And good due process post would say, hey, we wrongfully imprisoned you. Sorry. Here's
sorry, Saar.
sorry. Here's your check. What did Delta give all of those people? $12,000 after they capsized. Was it $30,000? Okay, so not so bad. Here's $30,000 for your troubles. Sorry, we capsized the plane. Is what it is. No harm, no foul.
Yeah, here's $30,000. Sorry, we wrongfully imprisoned you. Sent you to El Salvador prison, and maybe made it to Guantanamo.
Okay,
but so outside of that, we're sorry.
6,000 people,
30 grand.
But 6,000 people out of a million. If you think about it, it's really not that bad.
Well, this is the problem, right? Because if you want to make this type of radical change, and I'm not completely anti-benevolent dictatorship. I think that benevolent dictatorship actually, it may be the best model, actually, for radical change within society. And if a society is going, a political system especially, is going so far off track, maybe that's the best way to bring it back. But the problem with benevolent dictatorship and dictators in general is that often the people didn't get to choose that dictatorship. That dictator became the dictator after they got in for another reason. And maybe if we were electing a benevolent dictator, maybe that election would have been different. So that makes it really interesting there because they get that position through a power struggle and power game rather than actually the wishes and the desires of the people. So, but then if you had a choice to say, hey, everyone, this election cycle, we're gonna be choosing the next dictator for life. Like, how does that even happen? You know what I mean?
It doesn't happen.
Exactly. Someone always has to take it by force.
Yeah.
And then the person that takes it by force is that the guy you want because he is willing to break the rules to take things by force, meaning that there are certain flaws in that person. Because obviously it's not for the greater interest because they're willing to break the rules. Meaning once they get into power, wouldn't they also break the rules? Even if it's their rules that they're setting.
Well, yes.
It is this crazy logical loop that you get stuck in.
Well, For the populace, yes. But for the dictator, no. Because the dictator is a dictator by definition, so therefore they can do whatever they want. They can change the rules whenever they want. They can go left, and then they can go right. They can go straight. They can go backwards, forwards, up and down whenever they want. And that's just the latitude that you are afforded as a dictator. I think the question that always sits on my mind is, how do they ensure that their power as a dictator doesn't move to malevolence? Right? How do we move from a benevolent dictator to a malevolent dictator? And from my understandings of what Bukele is doing in El Salvador, he's making sure that his administration is as transparent as possible. I remember watching something that I had to give him props on, and it was just like, you don't know if it's for part of the game, it's part of the show. You never know. But man, it sounded so good, and I'll try to repeat it here. He essentially was saying, why did we have so much malfeasance? Why did we have so much backdoor dealing? Why did we have so much pay for play in all of our government agencies? Why do we have all of that? And one of his ministers off to the side, and this was a live broadcast, he said, because they were not transparent. Right? And he was like, yes. What we have to do is shine light on everything that we're doing so that it's always transparent, so the people know what we're doing. Now, will they know the planning? I think he went into talking about that. Will they know the plan? No, no. But will they see the outcome, and will they see the strategy exacted? Yes. And will they be part of the retrospectives? Yes. And could it be part of the game? Could it be part of the play? Maybe. But damn, it sounded good, man.
But isn't that the argument for the Trump administration now? This is the most transparent administration in history.
Yes.
That's what they tell us.
That's the narrative.
Same with Bukele. That's the narrative.
Yes. And will we, because we don't live in El Salvador, are we on the ground looking at the TV and going, no, we know you're lying because I know my homie who works here and here, and no, this country's so small, there's no way, you're not doing it, you're a liar. The difference in America, we live here, and we can smell the bullshit. Right? We know Doge is not as effective as they say they are. We know Doge is addressing political issues when they should be addressing the bigger behemoths and bigger elephants in the room. Right? We know that there's a lot of backdoor dealing still. And man, have you heard about the JFK stuff? Like his blackmail stuff? You haven't?
RFK.
Sorry, RFK. JFK. Have you heard of the RFK stuff?
I haven't looked far into it.
Okay. Anyway, so my point is America, we know that it's BS. We smell BS. They're not as transparent as we think they are. With El Salvador, maybe they can be because the size and scale is so small. Maybe they truly can be.
How many Americans do you think would be willing to give up personal freedoms for a better life? Because that's really the trade-off. So if you can guarantee that going down this third term of Trump, maybe a fourth term of Trump, maybe some sort of passing of lineage to another Trump, if that would give you more safety, if that would increase the education system, if that would increase the economy because there's stability, if that would make you stronger on the world stage, if that would close the borders, if it would solve over the time all the things that we kind of wanted to change. But the trade-off is that you live in a more surveilled society because you can't do these things without more surveillance. You can't have more safety without more surveillance. If you have to have a less freedom of speech society because you can't have dissenters everywhere, like you have a goal you want to achieve.
Yeah.
If it meant that you had to give up some of your civil liberties, but at the end of the day, you would have a better life. How many people do you think would actually make that trade-off consciously? Thanks for watching the clip. If you want to see the full episode, click here. If you want to see more clips, click here.